Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. This topic is Blessed are the Afflicted. And we'll begin with the message, an opening message, which is from our Daily Bread, number 72, Look Farther Ahead. For with the same measure with which you measure others, you yourself shall be measured. Jesus, Luke 6:38. To Eskimos, the sky is a continent made of ice, supported by seals. To primitive peoples in the forest, there is no paradise greater than abundant game. To persons of sectarian religion, the glory beyond the grave belongs exclusively to them and those who are of the same mind. To the erudite, this world and the heavenly spheres that surround it are but a small corner of the universe. Transfer this observation to your own field of daily activities, and do not forget that external situations will be registered in your inner realm according to the elements of reflection harbored in your conscience. If you persevere in anger, all the energies around you will appear enraged. If you prefer sadness, you will see discouragement on every step of the road. If you doubt yourself, no one will have confidence in your efforts. If you've become accustomed to trouble and disagreement, it will be next to impossible for you to live in peace with yourself. You will live either tormented or peaceful within a lower or higher realm where you choose to place your mind. And within the atmosphere that suits you, you will live with the spirits you call upon. If you dwell on idleness, you will experience idleness in all of its tones and hues. And if you involve yourself in work, you will find 1,000 different ways of being useful. The scenery that surrounds your steps will always be what you deem it to be. For with the same measure that you apply to nature, the living work of God, nature will measure you. That's a beautiful message tonight, reminding us of our responsibility of our thoughts and our actions, how it creates our experience for ourselves and others. Okay, tonight I'm going to go on and do the opening prayer before we bring David out for the presentation. Heavenly Father, Master Jesus, we thank you for this opportunity to come together tonight to hear the message of Blessed are the Afflicted brought to us tonight by David. And we ask you for your guidance and your help to oversee him, to guide him through, that we may receive a message that all can understand in our minds, feel it in our hearts, that we may deepen our understanding a little bit further and continue on our path in your light to grow toward you. And so we would like to ask for your permission to begin the study of tonight. We thank you, and so be it. And now we'd like to bring in David Hawksley for his talk tonight on Blessed are the Afflicted. David?
Good evening, everyone. Our study this evening is a continuation in the chapter 5 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, Blessed are the Afflicted, specifically items 18 through 31. So we begin this evening. To suffer well or badly. From the spirit Lacordaire, given in Havre, 1863. So, not all who suffer are blessed. No, everyone suffers, but few suffer well. Discouragement is a fault. Your burdens are proportional to your strength, meaning that the Lord will never burden you with the level of suffering that you can't handle without His assistance or the assistance of the good spirits placed in your life. Your reward is proportional to your resignation and your courage. So obviously, as each of us suffers, we're judged on how we handle that suffering. Some people complain, some people curse the Lord, curse their situation, and basically they rebel against their trials. And then some are resigned and accept their trials for what they are and use them to grow and to progress. Your challenge is equal to the promotion. So the greater the challenge that you overcome, the much greater that you progress. And then, of course, courage in the face of bitterness, of life. Sorry, everyone. Skipping. The courage that you face in the bitterness of life leads to victory in heaven. So the key for us here is to learn how to navigate our suffering so that we can use it for our personal growth. Because the better we do here, the more reward we receive in heaven. Blessed are they whose faith, firmness, perseverance, and submission to God's will have been tested. For they will be rewarded 100-fold in heaven, what they lacked on earth. So the more we suffer well here on earth, the greater our rewards in heaven will be. Next, we discuss evil and its remedy. In the message that was presented to us by St. Augustine in Paris, 1863. We live in times of weeping and gnashing of teeth. Expect suffering, but praise God for allowing you to be tested. Follow Christ's example as he praised the Lord during the height of his misery. Do not limit yourself to the testing ground, but focus on the life eternal. St. Augustine is pointing out to us, as Paul did, adding up his treasures in heaven instead of here on earth. This is our playground. This is our school. The tests that we have to achieve here on earth are used to determine how well we, or what we receive when we go to the real life, and then plan for our reincarnation to try to learn the lessons that we failed to learn the time before. What is one lifetime compared to an eternity of service to God? What indeed? For there is no greater gift than the opportunity to serve and to serve God well. You choose your path when discarnate, so why complain now? Given the opportunities, My wife and I would frequently talk about this, the whole "I got this" mentality. No, don't worry, I got this. Well, the more I learn, the more I study, the more I realize I don't got this. And I think a lot of people feel the same. But just remind yourself, as you suffer here on earth, this was our plan. We told our fellow spirits, no, I can handle this trial. So don't complain about it, because you're the one that chose it. God didn't just randomly say, hey, this is your trial. Deal with it. He doesn't work that way. Request for riches and glory to overcome the struggles of temptation. Requested struggles of body and soul against moral and physical evil. The harder the struggle, the greater and more glorious the victory. Let that sink in a little bit. If you're really having difficult times and you handle them with aplomb and grace, then your rewards in heaven are exponentially greater. If you muddle through it and you complain, you lose a lot of the benefits that you get from that trial because you didn't do it in the right way. Although you may be cast upon a dung heap, your soul will rise purified. Faith is the only infallible remedy for cruel obsession, excruciating ills, and suffering. Those who believe are strengthened by faith. Those who doubt, they experience affliction. Those who believe are sealed by God. Continues with, those who suffer with faith will suffer no more. Because they understand whatever trials we face here are temporary. As I was explaining to a friend today, whatever's happening today, whatever judgments we make today, they're based on a very finite amount of experience. All we're doing is basing it on the here and now. We're not thinking about what preceded. We're not thinking about what follows. We're very materialistic in the way that we view things. And ultimately, when it's all said and done, we have to expand on our understanding of why we're suffering and then move forward. Because if we dwell on the past, we're bound to relive it. And if we don't focus on the here and now, we don't get the true benefits of what it is that we're trying to do, the mission that we've been given, the responsibilities that we're supposed to see through. Those who suffer with faith will suffer no more. Their greatest pain will be the first notes of eternal joy. Their soul will disengage and soar through the heavens, singing with the angels. What beautiful imagery that is. Happy are they who suffer and weep. May their souls rejoice, for God will fill them with blessing. What a wonderful way of thinking of it. Obviously, we don't, he's not saying we need to revel in our misery. Nobody would expect us to do that. But if we focus on the fact that whatever it is we're suffering, we agreed to that in the first place. And the suffering that we're facing is because we're trying to pay for things that we did in the past. So sometimes we take, okay, I took on more responsibility than I can actually handle. Yet, God says, you will not provide those sorts of trials to us that we can't handle with help. Then it's on us to determine how we ask for and receive that help. Next, we move on to happiness is not of this world. A message provided to us from the spirit of Francois Nicolas Madeleine, Cardinal of Morlaix, given in Paris, 1863. And in case everybody hasn't figured it out yet, I'm not actually quoting or reading from the book. I'm kind of sort of giving you my take on what was provided and highlighting those parts that I think were most touching to me. So in this section here, there's the quote, "I'm not happy. Happiness wasn't made for me." Well, rich or poor, powerful or weak, young or old, or individuals that have a combination of all three, they all have this same saying. It's amazing, no matter how well off a person is considered or how destitute a person is, they have the same complaints in regards to happiness. Well, happiness is not of this world. All suffering is proof that Earth is a planet of trials and expiations. Materialists delude themselves in the pursuit of happiness on Earth because they're focusing on the material. They're focusing on the transient here and now. They're not focusing on providing treasures in heaven for their spirit. Our spirits are immortal. They're eternal. They go on forever. Our individuality is what makes us who we are, not the body that we possess at any one time. It's just a vehicle for us to go through the trials that we've already agreed to go through. Materialists, as I said, materialists delude themselves in the pursuit of happiness on Earth. Those envied by the masses are seldom completely content for more than a year. Because the more they have, the more they want. It's an unending pursuit of more stuff, as opposed to enlightenment, education, enrichment, moral purity. God is merciful. There are more evolved worlds to which your soul may ascend. Spiritism is the first step in planetary transition. The spiritists need to get to work. They need to spread the doctrine, help their brothers and sisters, and transform this world from that of trials and expiations to one of regeneration. It's incumbent upon us to kickstart this thing and get the process moving. We already know that we're in the world of transition. Let's do our part to make sure that we can move through that transition and get to where we need to be. We continue with a message from Sanson, a former member of the Parisian Spiritist Society, given to them in 1863, on the loss of loved ones and premature deaths. You'll hear folks say, God is not just. This is a common response when persons lose a loved one. They're hurting. They're in pain. They miss this individual that has been taken from their life. But in focusing on the fact that their physical body has ceased, and not focusing on the fact that they've been released from their trials here on earth, and that they're able to then assist us as spirits in the spirit realm, is short-sighted. we as people see evil in the good. And providential wisdom is fatalism of destiny. God's justice is pure, reasonable. We should examine our suffering, and in so doing, it will reveal there's divine reason, regenerating reason. Your miserable self-interest should be discarded. It's not about us. Premature death is frequently a great blessing. Think about it. We're here on this earth for a reason. Generally, that reason is one of us paying for things that we've done in our past. And if we're taken early, it's a sign that God thinks that we've learned the lesson or we've accomplished the mission that we came here to do. So our suffering is no longer required for that lesson. So in that blessing, it's the prevention of bitterness. It's the end of suffering. We expedite our spiritual and moral progress. It is the height of selfishness to wish those granted an early release had instead remained in order to suffer alongside us. It doesn't mean that we can't miss them. That's not what the Spirit's saying. But the idea that, hey, I'm still here suffering, and you should be suffering right alongside me, is incredibly selfish, as the Spirit points out. You who see in death an eternal separation lack faith and revolt against God. Like I was saying before, once they've been released, they're more readily able to provide us with assistance from the other realm. And then joyously greet us when we pass on ourselves to help us in our transition into the spirit realm. Souls freed from the flesh are more able to remain close to and assist us. Those who understand the spirit life, ask God to bless the departed, and you will find peace and consolation. It reminds me to say, in their passing, yes, we'll miss them, but they're in a better place. And that's frequently said as well. Well, they're in a better place. Yes, so bless them in their journey and know that, you will rejoin them when it's your time. Now, the Great Spirit, Fenelon, shared a message in Saints in 1861 regarding if he had been a good man, he would have died. I'm sure many have frequently heard the old saying, only the good die young. There's a reason why these old sayings happen. It's not just a, yeah, sure. But there's a lot of truth in it because God has deemed, like I said earlier, God has deemed that their trials and sufferings have been sufficient for whatever lesson they have, and they've completed their term of quote unquote exile here on earth. So the Spirit says, if he had been a good man, he would have died. Or, as I said, only the good die young. Budding spirit provided longer to progress. Good spirits rewarded with shortened trials. Then people would say, I would rather it had been him instead. Well, those who depart early have completed their task. how unjust God would be if he ended the life of a bad person before they had the time to finish their task. Think on that a little bit. So if you're here and you're still, chugging along, and then it's like, no, it's over, but then you haven't completed your task, that means you're going to have to repeat it. So whatever suffering you were going through here, you're going to have to suffer some more. That that doesn't relate to being a just God. If he's just going to randomly, no, pick. Also, I was pointing out to my friend earlier today that we were talking about those monsters of history, the Hitlers and the Stalins and the killing of innocents. And I said, innocent by whose definition? Innocence in the short-sightedness of in this particular incarnation. Well, that completely disregards all of our previous existences. Now, we don't remember them because God is merciful. But if these things are happening to us, there's a reason for it. And that reason is us. And so we need to understand in that regard that our suffering is our own. And, we have to own it. Now, that said, God doesn't want us to suffer for the sake of suffering. These trials are just that. They're trials or obstacles put in our way for us to figure out how to get beyond them. So suffering, even in this existence, isn't an eternal suffering. It's not start to finish. It was never intended to be. Excuse me. God is just in all things. Do not criticize that which you do not understand. Your obtuse senses see evil where true blessing is. The higher you ascend, the less important material life will have. So, the closer we get to being pure spirits, the less we attach to all of this material life that we currently experience. And that provides me with a lot of hope. And I hope it does for you as well. A long time ago, I had issues with when I read the Bible, specifically those passages attributed to St. Paul. And I was like, well, he was so focused on the heavenly life. I was like, yeah, but we have to live in the here and now. This doesn't make any sense to me. And then my wife, Barbara, introduced me to Spiritism, and things started to make sense. And the more I studied, the more I realized that, no, his head was in the right place and mine was way, way in the wrong. And it was, a powerful message that touched me deeply, because my focus has always been, or had been always, in the material. And always thinking that I'm right, always thinking that things are of that nature. And so in starting to try to focus on doing the good while I'm here and spreading the good news as I understand it, and taking these opportunities to share with my fellow spiritists, I appreciate that opportunity. So again, an attempt to personalize the message here. Your existence as a spirit is the only true existence. That harkens back to what I was saying earlier. We're eternal beings. So we're going to transition through multiple lives. We've already had multiple lives, and we're going to have many more, because we're far from perfect. If we were closer to being perfect, we wouldn't be on Earth. We'd be on one of those other advanced planets. So just food for thought there. The Spirit Fenelon provided another message in Lyon in 1860 in regards to voluntary suffering. Now, when I first read the title of this portion here, voluntary suffering, I was thinking of, oh, well, I'll select this, and this prior to incarnating. But then I noticed that his message actually referred to us creating our own suffering here on earth after we'd incarnated. So he points out that people fruitlessly search for that which does not exist on earth. People seek material pleasures instead of spiritual ones. Peace of mind is the only real happiness in the world. People create their own suffering. Are there any greater torments than those caused by envy and jealousy? That's a very, very telling question. Envy and jealousy, the idea of wanting what somebody else has, or wanting somebody to share in your suffering. There's always that one-upsmanship that I've found. You see it on celebrities all the time, and people who don't have a lot, and they watch all of those shows about the rich and famous, and oh gee, they make their own judgments, and it's out of a it's an inner desire to have what they have, and then you'll notice that the people who come into wealth, they're always trying to one up the other people that have wealth, with lavish spending and things that don't really make sense to a lot of us, quote unquote, ordinary people. There is no rest for the wicked, the envious, and jealous. They're always seeking to inflict traits on their target. All the material gains will be lost, and they don't transfer to heavenly treasures. I mean, that's where Paul had it right. If you're saving up treasures here on earth, uh, the moths will destroy the cloth things, and rust will destroy the metal things, and thieves will come and steal whatever it is that you're saving up here, as opposed to focusing on saving your treasures for heaven. And that's why I said, Paul had it right. His focus was actually in the right direction, on the real life, not on the test here on earth. But after the fact, once he converted and started to preach the good news, his life was an example of the self-sacrifice and the privations necessary in providing the message. Read the message the other day. I made myself weak for the weak. All things to everyone in order to save a few. Powerful words. Real happiness is serenity in the midst of life's storms. Self-imposed suffering is avoidable. We need to learn to be content with what we have, because all of us are on various steps of the evolutionary ladder, and we need to spend our time looking down to see all of those less fortunate instead of envying those further up the ladder or the stairs. Delphine Desjardins, it's my attempt at French, gave us a message in Paris in 1861 in regards to true misfortune. Now, everyone talks about it. Everyone experiences misfortune. And they believe they know what it is. And yet, nearly everyone is wrong. That which appears unfortunate turns out to be fortunate. People talk about those things that are unfortunate: poverty, fireless chimneys, threatening creditors, loss of a child, tears, passing of a loved one, betrayals, wounded pride. These are misfortunes for materialists. True misfortune is the consequences of things not in the things themselves. That which appears fortunate turns out to be unfortunate. And those things which are truly unfortunate are happy events that lead to horrible consequences. We think that they're wonderful things here on earth, and then all of a sudden we realize that, in fact, they were detrimental to our moral well-being, or they lead to additional suffering and us having to redo events. To judge something, one must examine the consequences. However, only after discarnation can the consequences be felt. The misfortunes of your short-sightedness end with death. So, again, in the material sense, focusing on our suffering that we're here on earth, our time on earth is limited. Again, I was talking to my friend this afternoon, and I was pointing out, if you took the number of years of an individual here on earth, and then you took some random number as it pertains to the universe, when they're talking about millions of light years, etc., and you divide that number of years by the greater number, you'll find that you get some incredibly minute number. And if you round to the nearest whole number, it's 0. Well, by that theory, we don't actually exist. The amount of time that we spend on this planet is negligible in the overall sense of eternity, which goes back to what I was saying, because we're eternal beings, immortal spirits. We're going to live on forevermore. And so this time, the sufferings that we have here, if you look at them in that light, it's near non-existent. It doesn't feel that way at the time, but if you can maintain perspective, you can deal with it a little bit easier. It won't be better in the long, or it won't make you feel better at the moment, but that idea that there is an end to this suffering, even if it's just the end of your trials here on earth, then you transition to something better, something new, something glorious, and then try a new trial if you haven't learned from the past. Misfortune is the opium of the forgetfulness that you ardently desire. Joy, pleasure, turmoil, empty agitation, and vanity. Silence the conscience, they oppress the active thinking, and they distort one's future. We do not fool God. Our creditors will plunge us into the agony of true misfortune. The consequences of our actions or inactions, the results of indifference and selfishness. May Spiritism enlighten you. Truth and error have been strangely deformed by our blindness. A soldier would sacrifice all that he has for victory. His sword, his armor, his shield, everything that he's carrying, his supplies, if at the end of the day he knows that he will be victorious. Because that's what it's about. The true believer will sacrifice everything to enter heaven radiantly. I'd like to share with you, in regards to misfortune, a Zen story about cause and effect. There lived an old farmer who had worked in his fields for many, many years. One day, his horse bolted away. His neighbors dropped in to commiserate with him. "What awful luck," they tut-tutted sympathetically. To which the farmer only replied, "We'll see." Next morning, to everyone's surprise, the horse returned, bringing with it 3 other wild horses. "How amazing is that?" they exclaimed in excitement. The old man replied, "We'll see." A day later, the farmer's son tried to mount one of the wild horses. He was thrown on the ground and broke his leg. Once more, the neighbors came to express their sympathies for this stroke of bad luck. "We'll see," said the farmer politely. The next day, the village had some visitors, military officers who had come with the purpose of drafting young men into the army. They passed over the farmer's son, thanks to his broken leg. The neighbors patted the farmer on his back. How lucky he was not to have his son join the army. "We'll see," was all that the farmer said. I thought that was so telling. It's like, because how can we judge? How can we here on earth judge the will of God? We're certainly not equal to him, not even the divine spirits that have been presented to us. So it's pretty egotistical of us to think that we know God's will. So like the farmer, we'll see. This too shall pass. So moving along, melancholy from the spirit Francois de Genevieve in Bordeaux. Unhappiness is caused by your spirit's imprisonment in the body. It wants to be free and happy. It exhaustedly resigns itself to being trapped until released to return home. Anyway, so the idea of melancholy, when we have those feelings of being just that blah feeling, that it's because our spirit doesn't want to be here. It wants to be back in the real world, so to speak. And yet our bodies keep it trapped here on earth, thus experiencing the suffering and the like. Here we go. So our spirit wants to return home instead of being here. Well, who wouldn't? I mean, the whole purpose of the earth currently is that of trials and expiations. And who really wants to suffer? Except those people who enjoy suffering for whatever reason. We need to strongly resist these feelings that weaken our willpower. Yearning for a better life is innate in all spirits. We all want to be better. We all want to have more. It's just our focus on what more it is that we want that's at issue. Do not seek it here in this world, because all this world has is material stuff. The treasures that we need are in heaven. Stay focused on the completion of your tasks, your mission, whether it be family obligations or to God or to those that God has entrusted to you. Our mission is what's key. Stay strong and resolute when faced with adversity. All life's struggles are temporary. Angel of deliverance will reunite you with your loved ones. Everything is transitory here on earth. Voluntary trials and true sackcloth. A message was provided by a guardian angel in Paris, 1863. Can you mitigate trials? Trials are meant to engender intelligence, patience, and resignation. The merit is based on bearing the ills that cannot be avoided without complaint, persevering through struggles, and avoiding desperation when unsuccessful. Indifference is laziness. Is there merit in seeking affliction? Yes and no. Yes, if meant for the good of others, charity through sacrifice. No, if only for the good of oneself, selfishness through fanaticism. So if you're doing something, if you're depriving yourself of something and it's causing you suffering, but it's for the benefit of others, then that's a good thing. But if you're doing it because, oh, woe is me, self-flagellation and all this, I don't deserve, you're drawing attention to yourself, and you think that this suffering is going to expedite your passage, and then no, it's not beneficial. Individuals, be content with the trials you already have. Do not seek to increase them. Accept them without complaint. Do not starve or harm your body. Your strength is needed to complete your mission. Self-harm violates God's law. Weakening the body is true suicide. Use it. Don't abuse it. This produces unavoidable consequences. And for others, sacrificing for others is blessed by God. Leave comfort to provide consolation. Dirty your hands to treat wounds. Lose sleep to stay bedside with the ill stranger. Using your health to perform good deeds. If you've surrendered the pleasures of this world to become a consoling angel to the disenfranchised and the poor. However, if you're avoiding your trials, this renders you useless. Mortifying your spirit, not your flesh. Whip your pride. Be humiliated without complaint. Flog your selfishness. Harden yourself against insult and slander. These are the true sackcloth. I'm going long. Should we put an end to our neighbor's trials? Bernardin, Bernardin, I guess, a protector spirit in Bordeaux in 1863, explains to us. Should we put an end to our neighbor's trials, if we can? Or should we, out of respect for God's design, let them take their course? Your trials are a consequence of your previous existences. Some believe these are not only necessary, but should be increased. We should never presume to know the will of God. Do not say, it is God's justice, and it must take its course. Say instead, let's see what means our merciful Father has put within my reach in order to ease the suffering of my brother or sister. Let's see if my moral consolation, my material help, or my counsels might not assist in overcoming this trial with greater strength, patience, and resignation. Let's even see if God has not placed in my hands the means of putting an end to this suffering. If it has not been given to me, also as a trial, an expiation perhaps, in order to deter evil and replace it with peace. Always help each other, never harm. Spiritists know more, and therefore more is expected of them. All are on earth for expiation, but must mitigate the expiation of your neighbor according to the law of love and charity. And the remainder are from the spirit of St. Louis. Is it permissible to shorten the life of a patient who is suffering with no hope of a cure? A man is dying, the victim of cruel suffering. His state is known to be hopeless. Would it be permissible to save him a few moments of anguish by hastening his end? Who knows the will of God? Certainly none of us. Doctors are fallible, they're human, and they can misdiagnose a patient. There are moments of true clarity may present themselves during death throes. How many people have experienced or seen in the case where people are suffering and then all of a sudden, just prior to death, it's like, oh, I feel so much better and everything seems wonderful. And they have these moments of clarity and they have this opportunity to say goodbye to people or to ask for forgiveness or to apologize. If you end their life early, they don't have that opportunity. And you've stolen that from them. And thus, you've forced them to repeat something that they could have solved while here on earth. Moments of true clarity may present themselves during death throes. Materialists only think of the body and not the soul. Mitigate final suffering, but do not shorten a life. Murder is murder. Whether we didn't intend it to be for horrible reasons, we're not right in justifying the taking of a life, as I understand it. St. Louis goes on with about the sacrificing of one's own life. Are persons who are disillusioned with life, but who do not want to commit suicide, guilty for seeking death on the battlefield with the intention of making their death useful? St. Louis is pretty clear. Intent to die is suicide. Useful suicide is a delusion. Serve by living. Bravery under fire is worth merit. Premeditated intent to die is suicide. A certain man exposes himself to imminent danger in order to save the life of a fellow being, knowing beforehand that he himself will die. Would this be suicide? If the individual is not seeking death, then no, it is not suicide. Because after all, death may not even be the result. Providence may decide that salvation may occur at the critical moment. The trial of resignation may be prolonged to the ultimate limit. So if he's not seeking to die, the idea is I could imminently die trying to save this person. That may not be his course. But if he's saying, "Oh, I just want this life to be over. Let me try to save this guy," then it's all about intent. Is he intending to end his life, or is he truly sacrificing himself for another? Making one's own suffering profitable to others. Do not those who resignedly accept their suffering by submitting to God's will with an eye on their future happiness work only for themselves? And can they render their suffering profitable to others? It may be beneficial to someone else. Materially, privations of self for welfare of neighbors, or morally, an example of submission to God's will can encourage resignation in others and save them from the despair and disastrous consequences. That ends my talk for this evening. I hope that if there are any questions, not seeing any. um, Thank you so much for your time and attention. I'd like to close this evening with a prayer. Dear friends, both incarnate and discarnate, thank you for this opportunity to share my understandings of the lessons that we discussed this evening about those blessed afflicted. May we learn to suffer well when we do suffer. And let us focus on providing those in need with the aid that they require. May we mitigate their suffering and help them to get through this experience as true brothers and sisters of one Lord. Master Jesus, thank you for your Sermon on the Mount. Thank you for bringing this wonderful message to us. And thank you for providing us the messages of the gospel so that we can better understand the messages that you provided to us in the Bible. And with that, dear Lord, Father in heaven, creator of all things, provider of all the resources for us to deal with all things, we thank you for this discussion this evening. And by your grace, we request your permission to end our study for this evening. So be it.